And I see people are coming in.
All right.
So if you're coming in now, we're just waiting a few minutes for audience members to collect before we get started. So if you're just joining us now, we're waiting for folks to collect before we get started. So I'll just wait another minute or two. All right, I will get us started and just let folks come in as they do. My name is Peter DeGrasse. Welcome to Harper Joy Theater's studio series, this evening featuring Black one-shot art in the time of pandemics and insurrections. This is also a presentation of race, violence, health, which is an organizing theme for the 2020-2021 academic year at Whitman College. The larger series is presented by the Department of Theater and Dance and is curated by Renee Archibald. She is a director of the dance program here. Before we kick off, I would like to acknowledge that the land we're on here at Whitman College is the traditional territory of the Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla tribes. That land was ceded to the US government in 1855 and resulted in the relocation of those tribes to the Umatilla Indian Reservation, and allowed 4 years later for the establishment of the institution that would become Whitman College. So thank you for joining me in that acknowledgement. Please also know that this evening's presentation will be video recorded. This is for the benefit of some international students who are in time zones more distant. And just a word about our guests this evening. Lisa Uddin is an associate professor in the Department of Art History and Visual Culture Studies here at Whitman. And Michael Boyce Gillespie is an associate professor at City College of New York and the Graduate Center CUNY. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Michael and Lisa. Enjoy the program.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks so much.
Hi.
Hello. Hey. And scene. All right. Yeah.
We have a few more thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisa and I would like to begin by saying thank you for all the work that Abe and Orly and Irene at ASAPJ have done in terms of making Black One Shot an even more wonderful experience for us. So thank you to the three of you for all your work.
I can't underline that enough. I'll highlight it, underline it, bold it, and italicize it. So yeah, big and special thanks to the ASAPJ crew.
Yeah.
And thanks to you, Michael, for joining us in this strange time, universe, format, moment, space, etc.
Yeah, it's so good to be in 2021. We can just forget all about 2020. But thank you so much for, yeah. So thank you so much for the invitation. As it's always wonderful to talk.
Well, so maybe it would help to explain that we have talked. Have we talked today? We're daily talkers. This is very alien to us.
We talk a little bit. We talk a little bit, you know, in our editorial capacities. I think we sometimes average 3 meetings a week. I think we have done 4 a week before, but now that we're drawing to a close, I think we're more settled into, we can definitely do 2 meetings a week. But that's a part of the process that where we read the pieces together and we go line by line.
Aloud.
And we yes, we go line by line. We do the edits. We switch off reading it out loud, and it's what we do. And I think it's what it helps us to understand not only the work of the contributors, but also it's about, I mean, the contributors deserve it. They've taken the time to accept our invitation for this wacky conceit of ours. So we should do the work of giving the reading some justice. So we go deep, but we have not talked today. Strangely,
we have not. We have not. So
talked today. Yeah.
I think we said when we talked yesterday that we were going to think a little bit about how this project, or maybe it's fair to say practice, started.
Right.
Some kind of origin story, some kind of mythic catalytic moment. Care to offer one?
Care to offer one? I think the beginnings of this project had a lot to do with when we first met, which I believe was fall of 2015.
That sounds right.
At the ASAP conference hosted by Clemson. And from there, it was a series of conversations that we had over our disinterest and distrust of empathy as a legitimate register of art criticism. And then from there, I think we did a summer camp together that Jonathan Eburn at Penn State had put together. And I know for me, it became clear that you and I shared a lot of beliefs about what we wanted from art criticism and what we didn't want from art criticism. But I think it was primarily foregrounded by what we wanted. And that had to do with a mutual love of listening to objects.
Yeah, object love, as we've later
object love
started to call it. So, yeah, and you know, we have a kind of account of our object love twice over as the sort of précis to each piece in the series.
Right.
But then we have an account that we didn't share that I looked up today to reacquaint me with the language, one iteration of our love language towards art objects. And I think when we're thinking about our critique of empathy as a mode of engaging in artwork, or as a sort of like payoff for engaging in artwork, some kind of outcome, some kind of metric, it might help to maybe share a little bit of this object love language. This idea that we are some of it. Well, one of the things I have written here that we wrote together at one point was, you know, this idea of getting dirty with the object.
Right.
And there's no way of sort of going object forward or resisting grand narratives and theories through object love, or trusting our objects without getting dirty with the object. And objects. And I don't know, does that still hold for you as a kind of?
I think so, because I, in my own work and the work that I gravitate towards, as from which I derive some measure of inspiration, I really appreciate when people are willing to listen to an object. And a part of that means a kind of generative submission in some ways. And in other ways, it's about, the kind of art criticism where there's these overtures that this will be an analysis of the object, and here is the object. And yet, with every paragraph that you read of this analysis, the object becomes more and more transparent. And you discover that this really isn't the kind of art criticism that I'm going to care about, because the object has just become anecdotal for a larger statement around sociality in general. And I think that when we had a lot more playful language around the dirtiness of it, but I think it's also about appreciating that to try and insist on a reading practice where we can insist that we have all the answers before we even see the object. And I think that sadly a lot of art criticism or does that. And I think it's particularly harmful or less productive in the context of thinking about Black art criticism.
And I would add, not even, but in addition to seeing the object, writing about the object, right? Yeah. If we think about how so many of our contributors are writing and then rewriting and re-knowing. Yeah. I mean, we've had, I will just flat out say, it's every case has been different, and every encounter and engagement with every contributor has been radically different, and really another sort of layer of object love in some ways, insofar as we're kind of getting to know their object commitments, their object love, but also trying to pull out through writing, not only seeing, but the act of writing as a kind of exploration and interaction between the object of affection, commitment, obsession, and the writer. So it seems to me that writing, including our own process for thinking about why object oriented art criticism, and not in a kind of materialist vein, but not excluding that, because we've had writers who do that, has to make room for a serious investigation of writing, hence the 1,000 word conceit. Do we maybe want to talk about why we went with 1,000?
Because you said hell no when I said they should be 1,500 words, and I wanted to argue with you. I was like, you can do anything in 1,000 words, Lisa. It should be 1,500 words, and thank God you were right, because there's no way we would have been able to do this if we were reading 1,500 word pieces.
It wasn't just pragmatics. There is a philosophy behind brevity and precision.
But it did not begin there. It began with, we can't be 1,500 words. So through our conversations, and also really kind of, I think what really sold me on the 1,000 words was, when we first did this series in 2018, there was the week before the first launch, and eventually we settled on what that transmission would be with work from Amber Musser and Faye Glazer and Huey Copeland. And I just remember being just completely awed and just profoundly kind of touched, like, wow, this actually works. And it's not that I didn't believe that it couldn't work, but I was definitely inspired to see that people were genuinely wanted to go on this journey with us. I'm still surprised that, you know, so what we're at 30 so far this summer, and we did 31. Yeah, we've done 30 pieces, and I'm still surprised that there were 30 people that wanted to do this, and 30 people who did such a wonderful job with this. So yeah, I think we started 1,000 words suddenly became, I mean, what are some of the things that we've learned from editing 1,000-word pieces is that your investment in the idea of the introduction has to change. There's
no introduction.
Much more earlier. There is no introduction. There is no introduction.
Jack, please.
And go. And, if you're, you know, some objects are easier than others to address, but there are ways in that people have been quite creative and how able to engage with them, and the multiple strategies that people have had to develop. I'm just really impressed and kind of honored that people want to do this with us. And I think that also is a part of why we do so much, that there's so much attention to editing, and that we edit together while we do it, because you know, for me, yes, this is a collaboration, but it's also about a friendship and a mutual investment. And I think that really compels me and inspires me to keep doing the work. So thank you, Lisa.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm just, 1,000 words. It started out as it was more overt. It's politics, I think, in some ways, right? We've always had the object love, but there was some conceit or some element of the conceit that was trying to attune to a kind of demand for up-to-itness, like we don't have time. There was an urgency. There's always an urgency. And in 2018, there's an urgency now. And in 2018, there was urgencies. But the brevity was an attempt to sort of tap into or be responsive to that urgency. Now I feel like in 2020, our 30 plus contributors are putting their eggs in the sort of possibilities of experimental writing basket more, and sort of, as we have framed it, divesting from academic respectability insofar as it might be represented through length, right? Like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, and so forth. But also, you know, this is I guess the third thing that I think about when I think of BOS is the transmission, and how 1,000 words gets around in ways that 1,500 wouldn't. But that there's we want them to go. We want them to travel. We don't want them anthologized in some concrete book form, but we want them to. They're not memes. They're 1,000 words, but they're digital. They move.
They circulate in the work circulates in a way that I think gives it. It's not strictly about an academic audience. I think I've told you this before. Like, I love everyone who's gotten back to us about how much they like Black One Shot, but the fact that my brother-in-law Bert likes it, that really that really gets me every time, you know. And there are just so many different responses to it, but people actually, you know, the fact that it is 1,000 words, it doesn't mean that this work doesn't have a great deal of poignancy to it. In fact, it's intense. There's an intense immediacy to every piece that there's a lot of adrenaline flashes editing them, and there's a lot of adrenaline flashes reading them, and cycling through the revisions. I mean, the entire process that once it's over, it's like every time there's a transmission, my first thought is, oh, that's great. I need to take a nap.
Nap time.
Yeah, it's like I immediately, like, let me get a nap in before we then suddenly have to, all right, we've got exactly, maybe we want to try to get this to ASAP in a week. So what comes next? And, it's the work is so smart, and it's so exciting, and it's the happiest endurance test that I've ever been, or endurance exercise I've ever been.
So this same, absolutely, no question, no doubt. But it reminds me of something we were talking about the other day, which is what we would rather do this than, and the idea of an endurance test and the immersive sort of quality of editing, 64 pieces thus far, and just like, what else would we be spending our time doing right now? And the answer for me is, there's nothing I'd rather do, because I don't understand this as an anathema to resistance or
a
kind of, I think this is not only a wholly adequate, but a necessary sort of response to a kind of anti-racist practice. And that the art of Blackness is, which we could talk about later, the difference between Black art and the art of Blackness, but that what we do is a practice of mental health, as well as a kind of response to violence.
It's a damn good prescription, Black One Shot takes all manner of insurance. Everyone is covered.
Everyone is covered. It's true.
Sure.
It's true.
Yeah. I think you and I we both had conversations about, our feelings after we wrote our first books, and thinking, I know you're proud of your first book, I'm proud of my first book, but I also know that we don't want to write that book again, or we don't want to write the book the way that we did our first ones, right? So I think that, in a lot of ways, this process is helping us reimagine or reinvest in the kind of writing, the kind of criticism, and the ways that we want to do that. It's not to say that we're going to suddenly come up, our next books are going to be made up of 1,000-word pages, but I think there's a kind of economy and precision in language that I know that we've established through our editing practice, which is as well, tacitly bleeding over in our own writings.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some of the writing? Oh, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. No, I just want to add as well that, Black One Shot is the best reading group I've ever been a part of. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's what it is. We send out invitations to people. It's not an open call. We generate a list, and we add names to that list. And the people who end up on that list are people, oh, that looks like it. I kind of read this article that was in this journal, or I heard such and such give this paper on a panel, and it's really just kind of that list becomes the foundation for the invitations that we sent out for this year. And it certainly was a part of what went into the list for 2018 as well, that it's, there are so many times that you hear someone speak and you don't necessarily follow up on it. It might be something in the marginalia of the book that you just happened to have with you when you were sitting in the audience. But this is about trying to do something with that, of trying to hold on to, of what is a genuine feeling of, I really am interested in how this person thinks.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that. And then you become curious. Well, what would this person be able to do with these particular parameters available? And it's been wonderfully surprising to see what everyone does.
I would also, I totally agree. And I would also add that the extent to which, I think you're describing a kind of formation of collectivity, the big reading group and so forth, book club, whatever. Not really, but so too also with one of the most fun parts is grouping together pieces and trying to imagine and then enacting our idea of what flows and hangs well with each other. And there's an arc to the whole series, but some of it's quite contingent because of the the vicissitudes of editing processes and stuff. I'll put it that way. But also there's like a sort of it's so social. I've never felt less isolated in in my life, which for me is a total lifeline, living in Walla Walla in rural Eastern Washington, and the capacity to connect not superficially but meaningfully with scholars and curators and deep thinkers and deep lovers of expressive practices in and around Blackness is, that for me is, I'm getting my pulse is racing just talking about it, because for me that's been the unexpected and absolutely unassailable joy of this practice. In addition, to our dynamics. So that idea of collectivity and community, I know it's an overwrought term. I know it can be cheapened in many ways, but these groups and subgroups that we've formed, these transmissions, how prescient that the language of transmission would be in 2018, and now sort of in our pandemic moment, that these things are little worlds and bigger worlds and sort of interchangeable sort of collectivities around, that are committed to Blackness and to the arts. I can't,
I sent the updated image of you of the banner for all 30 of the pieces, and it's fun to design this, as you said, in terms of plotting it out, of what makes a good transmission, what pieces could work best together, what pieces can play off of one another. We've been, I think we've been much more deliberate about that this go around. And I think has a lot to do with, we've been thinking further ahead in a way that it's really surprising. I'm not trying to say that we're the greatest thing since French bread or anything, but I think we've done the best that we can of orchestrating and organizing, as you said, of building these transmissions around a measure of community and adjacency and commonalities, and every transmission to me is its own kind of distinct intensity. That it's kind of, I've sent playlist mixes to people, and I'm always shocked when they say, "Oh yeah," and I was like, and as I'm talking to them, I realize, oh wait a minute, you didn't listen to it in order. Well, the whole design of the playlist was that you listened to it in order, and I know that we have that kind of stick when we think about the arc of each transmission as well. Yeah.
So to that end, we built a little transmission for this occasion.
Did with our lovely objects. To kind of speak a little bit to where, do you want to begin where we had initially assumed the beginning?
I mean, I think we assumed the beginning at the beginning of the list with Allison Field's Glenville.
Right.
At the beginning, Christina Knight's Rebirth is Necessary. Jasmine's amazing piece on the In My Feelings Challenge, and
Right.
Tina Camp's work on Okwe Pasili's and Partner Born.
Good job.
Yeah. No, I'm doing it right. I'm doing it again.
You are doing it right.
No, I'm doing it. No. Aquasili. And that sucks because I taught.
Damn.
Anyway.
See, this is why you get all the syllables. I leave all the multisyllabic stuff to you.
And Peter Bourne sitting on a man's head. Anyway, we're in the studio series right now, which is a performance infused and focused series run through the theater and dance department at Whitman. And so the arc was somewhat formulated in response to
most definitely
beginning with Glenville, which is many things, Allison's piece, but to me, through this lens, it highlights the performativity of two examples of film. Yeah. Did you have anything to say by way of that?
I mean, Allison's piece is looking at the ways in which Something Good, Negro Kiss, this recently discovered early silent film, which Allison was one of those responsible for identifying it, which is now appreciably known as the first cinematic rendering of Black intimacy ever. It's not, but the piece is very much about how the film Glenville revisits that history in terms of the history of the historical object, but then animates that history in terms of this kind of making this important shift from not simply referencing the history, but enacting its own historiography of reenacting that film in the streets of the Glenville section of Cleveland. And in that way, it's a powerful film about not only the rigor of the archive and the rigor of archive labor, but very much about the speculative and creative capacities of the work of the archive. And I think that Allison does a splendid job, which is of course emblematic of the work that she has done on early Black cinema in general, that of really pushing to rethink how we conceive of archive work, and I adore that piece, and I adore Allison's work in general. Yeah,
I do too. One of the things I love about this piece is how it sort of introduces towards the end Allison's own investment, or in the beginning as well. That's another thing. We kind of end up memorizing the pieces because there are 1,000 of them. But towards the end, understanding her reading of the object is totally informed by the pandemic in the summer of 2020, right? And what that brings to the reading is very explicit and produces a kind of situated knowledge of Glenville that is part of even the performativity of the piece itself, of the piece of writing. Maybe it's performativity 3 times over.
Which I think also speaks to our desire to have pieces which aren't necessarily, that aren't bound to these questions of academic respectability. In the sense that the work that we do is to be uninterrupted work and observation, because the ways that the pandemic and the current and the insurrections of our current moment have weaved throughout, we're not standing in the way of that when we get when someone submits their piece, because that's very much about it's important that people recognize how what impacts our capacity to read. You know, our training does not make us immune to the world around us. And we have all the work, there's so much of the work from this year has demonstrated that you should welcome the interruptions of the world in your reading practice, you know, to make you a sharper reader and hopefully just a better damn human being. Who knows? But,
so true.
Yeah.
And the other, I mean, the other elements that I think maybe are worth noting in the arc is the you know, the 4 pieces that we selected is, it seems that all of them, but especially Christina Knight's and the In My Feelings challenge is experimenting with trying to write about spatio-temporality and blackness, or black spatio-temporality, or space and time and its elasticity, and complicating it as a sort of constitutive element of any art of blackness. It's hard to sort of go in any deeper, but I just wanted to sort of flag why that's sort of important if we're thinking about sort of embodied, embedded performance. At the level of the object or at the level of the writing, is that we're also dealing with a kind of experiment with, a necessary experiment not being a luxury, but a survival strategy and a thrival strategy with space and time, And I can't imagine 2 other objects as being, well, I can. There are many objects that in our series, but these are such strong examples of the incredible elasticity and acrobatics and virtuosity of manipulating space and time through Black performance in particular, be it dance, you know, so described, or editing, or slowing down tape, film, so forth. So reversing it.
Which is, you know, what Christina Knight does in her reading of Rebirth is Necessary. It's, I was deeply touched and taken aback by the sharpness of her read, because I thought I knew that film, or I thought I was at peace appreciably with what I thought about that film. And it wasn't as though I felt that I was missing something, but it definitely helped. Her reading of the film helped me to kind of be much more expansive in terms of my thinking about spatiotemporality and of course spiraling out into thinking more about Black chronotopes. What is a Black chronotope? What is the chronotopic capacities of Blackness, moreover, and that the arc of that piece through that incredibly rich analysis then becomes the arc finishes on her sitting in the audience watching that film at the Black Star Film Festival, and of course I was doubly touched because I was in that audience as well when she was watching it. So it's to be able to make those shifts in terms of one's critical placement or critical vantage point to an object. It's just it's an incredibly good piece, and it's a piece that I now watch the film through newer eyes, and I'm grateful for that. And now I'm just like looking at Drake, and I just have to go on record that the best thing that Drake has ever done is inspired Jasmine to write this piece.
I mean, it's kind of exquisite, right?
I mean, people can go on and on about what Drake does for him. I'm sorry, Drake inspired Jasmine to do this piece, and he'll never do better than that.
I read it again today, and I just quietly said, perfection. I mean, it's a bit over the top, but honestly, I can't.
Yeah. I mean, we were making notes the other day of, you know what, rituals of black making and as a pop spectacle, a theory of black feeling, a social dance, free floating, unmoored
Oh yeah,
expressivity. Yeah, I'm looking at our notes. I'm looking at
just
our notes
read
right
the
now. Yeah. I mean, she could have talked a little bit about his Degrassi years, but beyond that, it's a pretty damn solid piece.
No, one of the gifts of that piece is that it's not about it. So I think here it's worth mentioning that when we talk about the object, we're not talking about the artist or the material object as such, or you know, that's one possibility, but it's certainly not the end
right.
of it. And what Jasmine Johnson does is show us how elongated and indeterminate and difficult it is to pin down where an object begins and ends, particularly in the case of a meme or you know, a challenge that has you know, all these sorts of attachments to and enactments of Black social dance, but also through the meme form has this kind of unmoored expressivity. It's what I wrote down too. But you know, that's where is the object? I think she asks that in the piece proper, right? So that's but it is you know, and it's a quick access to the links, so I can keep watching Shiggy. And you know, I do enjoy that meme. So and then the last piece, Tina Camp's superb exploration of what she calls hapticity as a direct critique of empathy, and strong on the performance and the sort of investigation of spatial proximity and indeterminacy. For me, that piece is like in my heart. When I read it, you know, I just, life was better. It's just, I love that piece. I love that piece. And I don't know, I just wanted to share it more. So that's probably why I made a bid for including it for this evening.
Well, I mean, in terms of making choices for the goals of this program at Whitman, I mean, the way that these pieces are organized, from Glenville to Rebirth to Drake to, and let's read the full title.
Yes.
Sitting on a man's head, an unfolding score for a collective utterance, the ongoing making of an I, you, we, and us. I mean, if you read these four pieces in the order that we have that's been provided, I mean, there's an escalation of and a necessary escalation and refinement and precision around thinking through and with these objects in terms of an almost reflexive gesture of thinking, not what do these objects tell us less about the world, but less about the investments that we might have in art and the ways that we might want to circulate in the world around us. I was particularly struck by, you know, rereading Tina's piece, not only the brilliance of her idea of hapticity, but the sliding measures around embeddedness that I found so wonderful. And I just remember when I first read it, and then when we were trying to work on the layout, wondering, you know, we need a detail image, and then immediately going on Instagram and finding someone who took a beautiful picture, and then reaching out to a stranger and being like, we need to use your picture. And he let us use it. And just that kind of sense that of so much out there circulating around this piece, and a web of strangers who've all been embedded within it, I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah.
Should we take some questions?
Oh, that's right. People are watching us. We should do that. Okay. Do we choose the questions, or?
I think our host might help us.
Hey, host.
Hi, Peter.
How are you? Hey, Peter. How are you?
I think you're on mute.
You're muted. You're
I
muted.
think you should just go ahead.
Okay.
If you'd like to enter a question in the Q&A, go ahead and do that, and then please.
Okay. Okay. Hey, Kim Whittaker, how are you doing, man? What's wrong with the book form? Okay. I no, there's nothing wrong with the book form. We're not saying anything's wrong with the book form, but I think in order for us to work, since so much of the series is steeped in an immediacy, that's why I think we've found so much joy and embraced doing online content over the book. But that's not to disavow that books have value. Lisa and I have a very finite amount of time that we can focus on this, and the online platform works best for what we can do. Do you want to speak to Black One Shot and the book form?
Well, we've thought about the book form for this series, but we've also thought about even making it less attached to a particular site. We've thought about making it as a, I can't even remember what the platform was that we wanted to
do an app.
We wanted to do an app.
We wanted to do an app. A non-data mining app. Shout out to Kevin McCoy. Yeah, Kevin McCoy developed the technology.
That's right.
And we thought about doing an app with the same kind of vertical streaming platform that one would expect from Instagram or Snapchat. And you wrote the grant. It was a lovely grant.
We didn't get it. Yeah.
But we didn't get it. We didn't get it. Yeah. But we still, it's we're just now finishing this. We'll see what happmes next time.
We'll see what happens. You know? We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Question. Hey, from Tanya Sheehan at Colby College. Shall I read it? I love you guys.
Yeah.
And the work you're doing. Can you talk a bit about how the pandemic has changed or reframed or differently motivated your practice, if at all?
Right. How about you start with
that? I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this, but I would sort of go a little bit deeper into the point that I think for me, I don't want to say for you, I don't know about for you, my guess is for you as well, is that it has intensified our practice. And that so for today, for example, or yesterday, what is the air quality index right now in Eastern Washington? It's 425. Extra hazardous.
Yeah.
My rhythm is, I'm cocooning. I'm breathing shallow. I don't want to leave the house, but I will and must read the work for the next transmission. And it is there's a kind of I don't want to use the word refuge, or solution or anything, but it's a balm. It is a kind of BALM. It's a kind of it is a strategy of coping. And I'm using the fires, but we can use the pandemic as an example as well. We can use the very fact that I'm in this cocoon right now, which is a function of, my power to be in a cocoon and stay cocooned, but also my desire not to make myself more physically vulnerable than I need to be in this town. So there's a way that Black One Shot is a kind of, I said it before, I think a lifeline. You said it's a prescription. It's the opposite of pathology and disease. It's the opposite of disease and pathology, and racial capitalism and climate devastation and that's how I'm feeling these days. I can't imagine doing this summer without Black One Shot. I cannot imagine
it. I can't imagine if we weren't doing Black One Shot, it would mean I would have to be watching the news more, and I don't have the time to do that because we're working our asses off on this. but I'm also, the thing about the pandemic, the thing about the general sense of insurrection that's going on in the world is that I felt more introverted. I felt more antisocial. I felt so damn happy to be at home with my family. I know things are very horrible, but I've just been happy to be kind of cocooned at home, you know, and having the opportunity to do work like this. And that, again, kind of feeds into my general sense of just wanting to be still and to be bunkered away a bit. And it's a part of my own, it's critical defense, I think is what I'm doing. Not only is it informing a lot of the way that I'm thinking about Black One Shot and the ways that the kind of tone that you and I have collectively developed and how we're speaking to writers and how we're editing writers. I mean, I'm learning a great deal across every transmission with every piece that I read, and I'm just trying to appreciate it and be patient with it, and try not to let anything outside of that overwhelm me. But it's not as though what's outside of that is really disappeared. You know, it's right on the other side of the door.
Indeed, yeah, that's exactly how it feels. That's exactly how it feels. For me, though, I would just add, you know, it's a bit of a paradox because on the one hand, there's this impulse for extreme seclusion and hunkering down. And on the other hand, there is this sort of, you know, it sounds relentlessly or maybe naively optimistic, but there's this utopic gesture of the collectivities that we're forging or attempting to cultivate through this series that might be momentary. They might not, you know, last. They might be they might just be on a Thursday morning, or, you know, when the transmission goes out at first and we send a flurry of emails, and I don't know what it's
and then take a nap.
Shelf life is, but there is a presence of, you know, I don't feel alone. I don't feel alone during this pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, you know, there's so much that you and I have talked about that's non-Black One Shot related in terms of indeed the state of the world and the state of our own kind of mental health as beings in this damn world. But I do feel that I feel very honored that so many people have decided to do this with us. And I try to, I value that people, like, I know how screwed the world is right now. And I'm sure our contributors know that, but they still made the time to write a piece and to hear what we had to say about it, and to help and to let us do our jobs as editors to help not change their voice, but to make it to make their voice as best as we can with their work, right? And that's a real, I as I said, I think it's a real honor that people replied to our emails when we invited them.
What's so funny about this conversation to me, and I'm thinking about, you know, I think what the next question, which is, you know, what's the next object you each want to write about? To me, as we're talking, I'm thinking of, you know, and we began with a discussion about object centricity or object love. But we're also talking about, like, the hyper relationality of all this sort of practice, right? That we are, you know, that there are the objects, and we've mentioned a few, the works of art so defined, but there's also, you know, the dynamics between us, between our writers, between, you know, the sort of minute inflections in the copious amount of email that gets, you know, circulated, the relationship between artists who end up sharing the work or receiving word that work's been written about them and their practice, and then sharing out. And I'm not on Twitter, but the pathway of Black One Shot on Twitter is a whole other story. And to me, it's so much about these relationships that to the question of what's the next object. I think that's actually less important than what I've learned, which is in this sort of this sort of professing and exercise and really getting dirty with the object is that it's whatever brings that amount of relationality and sort of community collectivity is what I will study. So I mean, there are projects, but these are the things that matter to me now more than the sort of the object as such, right? So I don't know. That's just a possible answer.
Yeah. So what is the next object? I mean, honestly, I think this. I have too many damn objects, I think. Yeah. I have, so however I would answer this question today, it would probably be something different tomorrow. I think what I want to try to do is organize all of my objects, because my object choices are telling me what the next book will be or what the next project will be. And in many ways, I still need to listen. I still need to devote more time to understanding why are these things the things I've carried with me for so long, and that they were presented at a conference, but the paper never really came together to be published afterwards, or this was an end note somewhere, or I hope to eventually be able to listen to the object as much as I profess that we all need to learn to listen to our objects.
Take your own advice.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Peter.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
Crystal clear.
So thank you both for bringing Black One Shot to Whitman College, and thank you for that rejuvenating conversation. And thank you everyone who attended this evening. Please stay tuned to Race, Violence, and Health, and please stay tuned to Black One Shot, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
All right.